my nightmare. Every town has an Elm Street.
Let's get high.
Come to Freddy.
We need you, Jesse. We got special work to do here, you and me. You've got the body. I've got the brain.
This is God.
Told ya, comic books was bad for ya. Hey, Danny, better not dream and drive. Nice hearing from you, Carlos. Stop, kid. I don't believe this fairy tale.
What's wrong, Joey? Getting tongue-tied?
Yes. Souls of the children. Give me strength. You are all my children now.
Welcome back to the Skewered Universe podcast. My name is Jeff, and this week I am joined by a very special guest because we are continuing on our Nightmare on Elm Street retrospective here in the Skewered Universe. This week we're talking about Freddy's Dead.
As a boy, he was always different. No one understood him.
You ready for it, boy? It's time to take your medicine.
Thank you, sir.
No one could control him.
Go inside, honey.
But now, it's a new beginning. The beginning of the end for Freddy.
Every town has an Elm Street. No! Screaming while the bus is in motion.
Did you mind or go for it?
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul, too. Oh, yeah.
We're gonna have to hit him with everything we got.
Now I'm playing with power.
We're in Twin Peaks here.
It's gotta be me and him.
You want to live?
Hey, watch out! What's with kids today, huh?
Freddy's Dead. The final nightmare.
Great graphics.
They've saved the best for last.
And I got my buddy Chuck
Howdy.
here with me to discuss this movie. How you doing, Chuck?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right.
Good. Glad to
Excited
have
to
you,
talk.
man.
Yeah, excited about talking about this movie, actually.
Good. I'm glad because I was wondering how this was going to play out. I'm like, who would come on to talk Freddy's Dead? Because I've not heard too many people. Well, I've heard reviews of it, but I haven't heard too many people just have a conversation about the movie.
It's the weirdest one out of the series, bro. It really, it's the Jason Goes to Hell of Nightmare on Elm Streets. You know what I mean?
It's very true. It's
Yeah.
very true. Because
Yeah.
just when you thought it couldn't get any weirder than Part 5, The Dream Child,
Right.
Freddy's Dead comes along and says, "Hold my beer."
Completely. Yeah, that is exactly what happens. And rewatching this, because I've always liked this movie. Just so that I've always been a fan of this movie. It's got some good memories. And then rewatching it the other night, there's so many different emotions as an older man. I hadn't watched it in a couple of years, but actually really watching it, me and my co-host of Graveyard Talk, Whitman, me and him rewatched it, and by the end of it, we were like, I don't know how I feel about that movie now, but you know, it's weird. It's a back and forth thing. So like, I was really been really pumped to go in here and talk about this movie a little bit.
Oh, okay, yeah. I see where you're coming from. I think we're coming from a sort of the same place here.
Yeah, I could sense it.
So to give a brief synopsis for anyone who may not know what Freddy's Dead is. So, taking place, what they say, 10 years after part 5, I believe.
Yeah, I think
There is
so.
only one surviving teenager of Freddy's massacre. We catch up with him. His name is John Doe. This is all we know about him. He's being tormented by Freddy. Ends up getting amnesia, due to Freddy's antics. Goes to, what is he, taken to a juvenile center? We'll say
Right,
some
right.
sort of shelter for at-risk youths, which was the big thing in 1991.
Yeah. That apparently carry really heavy machinery when it comes down to weaponry.
Yeah, like they just store it in a cabinet. We'll get there because I have my
We'll get
issues.
there. Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
He ends up sort of befriending this group of at risk teens that are there. Carlos, Tracy, and Spencer, and of course we have Maggie, who's like the social worker for these kids.
Billy Zane's sister.
Billy Zane's sister, yeah.
Yeah. I only found that out like 2 or 3 years ago. I didn't realize it. I never put two and two together.
Same, because they don't have any similarities.
Actually, they really do. Because after I realized, I never noticed her last name. And then I was like, no. And I looked it up. And then looking at him again, and then looking at her, I can see it. It's from like halfway her nose and up. It's the eye, it's the eyes and the forehead.
Oh, you know
That's
what? I'm looking
yeah.
at the cast listing here for the movie because I'll give a brief,
Yeah.
cast that. But I'm putting my hand over part of her face, and I'm like, oh, he's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in the eyes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. She's still a looker, but
Yeah,
she looks like, but you can definitely tell who her big brother is.
yeah. So we have some wacky characters, weird antics. Freddy has become basically a cartoon character in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Antics ensue, and we find out Freddy had a daughter, and ultimately we get to the point where Freddy's dead. That is the basic can get synopsis of this movie because there's really not a whole lot to it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of things here with one of the kids being, smoking a lot of pot, which I don't think the writers of this movie know how pot works.
Right. Yeah. No, I definitely wanted to bring that up. Yeah.
And then one of the girls it's alluded to that she was sexually abused by her father.
Which is probably the darkest thing about this movie.
Yeah,
Like, is that whole like dream nightmare sequence. Disturbing.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's the closest thing we have to like somebody else kind of being like Freddy. And
Yeah.
there's not much to it. It's, you know, a nightmare sequence happens and you're like, oh, that's dark, and then it's over with.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah. It's kind of like the last house on the left. Uh, what's the word for it?
The remake?
Shtick. No, the original.
Oh, the original.
Because
Okay.
yeah, in the original, it's very serious, kind of like toned movie. But then you have these cops that the music changes to a cartoon, and they're goofy, and they're like the comedy relief, and it's like that is not at all like it seems inappropriate. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it seems like in a movie like Freddy's Dead, which again, the whole thing with was it Tracy?
Yeah, Tracy.
Yeah, like you have all this goofiness and stoners and stupid jokes and just silly goofy B movie type shit, and then you have this uber serious scene where she has to confront Freddy, who looks like her sexually abusing dad that's dead apparently or whatever, and it's like I don't know. I didn't realize how dark that was until I rewatched it the other night, and me and Whitman were just like, "Ooh, that is that never noticed how sinister that actually is, and the fact that it's placed in this movie that is one big goofball." You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a tone shift that's really jarring.
Completely.
Yeah. So to run down here, we've got a few important cast bodies. We have, as we mentioned, Lisa Zane as Maggie. We have Sean Greenblatt as our John Doe, our main character who believes he's Freddy's child for most of the movie.
And is the most annoying character in this movie.
Yeah, he is. He definitely is. Ricky Dean Logan as Carlos, our hearing impaired friend. Breckin Meyer as Spencer.
Mm-hmm.
Leslie Dean as Tracy. Yaphet Kotto as Doc. And of course, we can't forget Robert Englund as the lovable Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
And
Lovable.
let's shout out a couple of the cameos with Johnny Depp showing up to do the "This is your
Yes.
brain on drugs" spot, as
Mhm.
well as Tom Arnold.
Roseanne.
Yeah, I was gonna say, in my own opinion, garbage human Roseanne.
Oh,
You know,
whatever.
my own opinion, but I'm not gonna go there. We're not gonna go there.
We won't go there. We won't
You
go
know.
there.
Anyway,
Anyway.
personal feelings about people aside, there's your
Right.
casting. They actually have Tom and Roseanne actually have a pretty fun cameo in this.
Well, when the movie came out, like that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Because I remember being a kid, and you hear there's like rumors that it was on like Entertainment Tonight or some shit, and they were talking about how Roseanne and Tom Arnold are going to be in the new uh film from the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise and all that, and you get all just like, oh wow, because growing up on Roseanne and stuff, I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then when you see it, you're like, oh, and then like they're it really is just a cameo. They're in there for like less than 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But you can't forget about Alice Cooper too. Alice Cooper
I was just gonna get to that. I'm like, I'm leaving off the man who portrayed Freddy's abusive father, Alice Cooper.
Yep.
Which is funny because now Alice Cooper has his hands in both Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street franchises.
Yeah, he does. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
One acting and one giving, the anthem to Jason,
Yeah.
the man behind the mask.
Oh yeah.
Which
Classic.
is that's a fun fucking track. I'm sorry.
Oh, dude, when me and my buddy went, we visited Jason Lives camp. We stayed there for a couple of nights. And yeah, it was a group of people and stuff. It was this whole like on location thing. And before, as we were pulling into the actual camp part, because you have to go there, you can almost get lost in some of the roads to get to it. We had to blast up the Alice Cooper song, and actually the funny thing is we had to blast it up twice because the first time we took the wrong road, and we're like, okay, woo! It's like Spinal Tap, where they're like, all right, this way to the stage, woo! They're like, where the hell's the stage? And but yeah, that's Alice Cooper, making his rounds in the franchises there a little bit.
Yeah, and also having worked with John Carpenter and Prince of Darkness, so he's like the trifecta. There's like a trifecta going on there.
Yeah, which is an underrated film in my opinion.
Oh yeah, more people need to check out Prince of Darkness.
Fuck yeah.
I mean, Donald Pleasance. I believe it's is it Victor Wong?
Yeah. Dude from Big Trouble.
Yep.
There's a couple other people I can't remember the names of a couple of them that are in there. It's been a minute. That's one that we've been talking about possibly doing for Graveyard Talk is Prince of Darkness, because me and Whitman both love that movie.
Nice. I discovered it. I don't want to say later, but it was probably in my early 20s when I discovered that one, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I was like, this movie's fucking intense, and it does not end on a good note at all.
No, it ends on a fucked up note.
Yeah, I actually used part of that transmission that was being broadcast through their dreams in that. Not to run off on a side tangent here, but
very good. Yeah.
The Patreon content we do, the intro for that has that included, that little broadcast part.
That's killer.
Because I just thought I've always liked that part. I'm like, that's really cool, but really fucked up to think somebody's like, we found a way to broadcast to your dream. Shit gets fucked up. You don't know what you're messing with.
Yeah. I love it. Hell yeah, man. Oh, dude, so good. So good. I've been on a big John Carpenter kick here lately. I've been working on my latest novella, and I've been listening to the lost themes of John Carpenter. There's 3 of them. And The first one's a little more old school giallo sounding. The second one has got a little more bite to it, and the third one is dark as hell, and it's perfect for the shit that I've been writing lately. So yeah, but anyway, yeah, I this is a John Carpenter
Nice.
episode, but I can totally do it.
Yeah,
But Alice, hey,
same
you know,
here.
just to justify it, Alice Cooper isn't Prince of Darkness. We were Kevin Bacon in that shit. You know what I mean? So we can shoot back around.
Exactly. We're playing 6 Degrees of Alice Cooper, I guess, tonight.
Hey, you know, if there's anybody ever going to play it with, Alice Cooper's a perfect one.
Yeah. I mean, if we want to go, we can start going to Wayne's World, and we're going to get off on a
That's
weird
right.
tangent.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You're right. Because now I'm starting to think. Yeah, you're correct. We need to go back on, back on the trail.
So Freddy's Dead, Chuck. I want to ask you, what was like your experience, like your first experience with this movie? Like, did you happen to catch it in the theater, or is it something you saw on TV later? Drive-in. Oh, nice.
Yeah. Well, see, I didn't get to watch all of it in the drive-ins. The funny thing is, where I grew up in Winchester, Kentucky, it's a little small place. We used to, up until a couple of years ago, and especially even more with weather this recently, we had a double screen theater drive-in that had been around since they started having drive-ins, and
nice.
it was a place that I went to as a kid and all that. And unfortunately, weather got really bad in recent times and destroyed it completely. So there was no ever coming back to it, and that just a little piece of my childhood there sucked. But um, one time, I don't remember. I went with friends to go see a movie, and I cannot remember what was the movie we were actually going to see. Now, like I said, I went to this drive-in all the time as a kid. But on one screen was so and so movie that we were watching, and then on the back screen was the movie I actually wanted to watch, which was Freddy's Dead. So, you know, because like an old school drive-in way, you got all these little speakers everywhere. So all you got to do is just walk behind where you're at and go over and sit, because it doesn't matter which screen you're at. You've already paid. They don't care. So like, you know, we would tell me and my buddy would tell his parents that we were going to go get some nachos and go to the bathroom. We'd sit over there and watch Freddy's Dead for like 30 minutes. And what sucked is when we walked over there, it was right on the 3D shit. And that was the only difference about the screens that night, is they had the 3D shit going on, and they were giving out 3D glasses, and we didn't have 3D glasses. So we didn't get to do the 3D thing, but we did see it on the big screen for about 30 minutes, and it was, you know, unfortunately it was like towards the ass end of the movie when all that shit started, with all that stuff's going on. But I was very intrigued because I had only seen a couple of Nightmare on Elm Streets at that point, and I was just now kind of really sinking my teeth into slashers and stuff at that point. So yeah, Freddy, of course, was, you know, as a kid was a big favorite. So yeah, it was kind of cool being able to, like, I saw it kind of in the, you know, the drive-in, kind of not. Yeah, so that's my first seeing it. But when I first actually fully watched it, it was I rented it with probably the same friend that I watched it with at the drive-in.
Okay.
There was a place called Roar's Video, the same place that I was talking about in Winchester, and it was great. They had a nice little selection of horror movies. We wanted to watch Freddy's Dead. It was we had been discovering all these horror movies and all the, you know, Hellraiser and you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all that. And so we were on the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and we got to Freddy's Dead. We couldn't fucking find it anywhere. You know, there was 2 or 3 other places in town that were out, because it was so, you know, it just got released on video. Well, actually, I'm sorry, it wasn't just released on video, but like people rent them out and never bring them back, you know.
Yeah.
And so we went to Roar's, and it was nowhere to be seen on the rack. And the guy heard us talking about it that was working there. He goes, "Oh, that's not in the horror section." I was like, "What? Where's it at? Romance?" And he was like, "No, comedy." And sure as shit, there was 2 copies, VHS copies of Freddy's Dead in the comedy section of Roar's Video.
Huh.
Yeah, so we rented it, and we were kind of curious why it was in the comedy section. And when we got home and we got back to his place, and we popped it in the VCR, and about 10 minutes in, we realized why. Because it was, even though there's camp throughout all of them, for the most part. This one just it's campy moments are just maximized. You know what I mean? Like you said, Freddy's more
Yeah.
of a cartoon character in this shit. You know,
Hmm.
so it was kind of different when I first watched it, and it actually took me a little while before I really liked it. But when I did, it became a favorite of mine for many years. Uh, since then, it's yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, so
But
I
yeah,
I did not have the cool semi drive-in experience with this. I actually the first time I actually sat down and watched this, I bought one of the first DVD box sets of the entire franchise. I don't know
oh
if you've ever
nice.
seen that set. It's like a black box with like a gold or like a bronze looking Freddy on it.
You put them all together and it's him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that.
So I had that one. I sold it years back and I kicked myself every day because it was such a nice looking box set.
Yeah, yeah,
But that was where I first saw Freddy's Dead because I just decided one weekend I'm going to watch all these movies. I haven't seen them all the way through. I've only seen, three, four, and five so much growing up on TV as a kid.
yeah,
Those were the constants. And when I got to
yeah,
this one, I was like, oh, I forgot this has the 3D part at the end of the movie. Which, I'll be honest, I watched the 3D part in 3D. You weren't missing a whole lot, other than the
right,
picture
yeah,
being clear on the screen at the drive-in.
right,
But
yeah,
it's a fun little thing to have. But yeah, the first time I saw it, I was watching through all the movies, and for me, it was like, okay, part two, I was like, that's the odd man out. I was like, I don't know
yeah,
what's going on here. And then I get to three, and I was like, of course, I love three. It's the one I watched the most growing up. Four and five have always been like they're fun, but they're like background watches. And then I got to this, and I'm like, what the hell did they do? What happened?
yeah,
And then digging into the franchise over the years as I have, I've realized what had happened. I was like, oh, that's why it is the way it is. So I didn't come away loving this in the beginning, but I have an appreciation for it now as just like the end of an era. They just kind of went, well, he's already been, I want to say starting in part four was when it really started to get heavy with the one-liners. He had a few in part three, but I think part three Freddy was still kind of dark.
well, part three though, that's where he coined his most famous phrase.
Welcome to
Welcome,
prime time, Britt. I
welcome to
can't even
prime
say it.
time, bitch.
Thank you, because I almost said Britch, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
Don't worry, I don't think we'll get canceled for saying britch.
No, no.
Uh, but yeah, yeah, yeah. There, he was still
He was still
there.
pretty dark in part three. I mean, one and two, you have a dark, sinister Freddy. Three,
Right,
he's still dark, but there's the one-liners there that are like, oh, he's got a bit of a sense of humor, but it's still really fucked up. You
right.
get to part four, and you're seeing Freddy on a beach in the dream putting on sunglasses. By the time we get to five, he's cracking so many jokes, like about the champagne, bad year, Dan.
Yeah.
And then by the time we get here, he's basically a Looney Tune in Freddy's Dead.
The funny thing is though, in four and five, um, yeah, he got a little goofier. I think that four and five got a like it kind of went back like it maybe got the story plot I think got a little bit more intense. Just because if you think about how dark it all, he was the bastard son of a thousand maniacs or whatever,
Right.
and that whole thing. There's a darkness about that one, because they added the nun in that was supposed to end up, find out it was his mom and all this shit or whatever. But within that, they still managed to make him, yeah, goofy as shit.
Yeah.
Um, but still wasn't until Freddy's dead.
Yeah. Freddy's Dead, they just kind of went full bore, like, well, he's this pop culture icon. I'm like, yes, but he's also a child murderer and possibly a pedophile.
Bing, bing, bing. Yeah.
So we can't really, you know?
Yeah. See, that's really funny you said that because when we were watching it the other night, I looked over at Whitman and I was like, dude, you see how goofy this movie is, and yet we know the story of what Freddy is, and even know that it was never said in the movies, it was just always kind of implied.
Right.
Until the remake, and they went whoo way too much on that one, but yeah, like it was just like, yeah, it's kind of fucked. Like, I mean, when Freddy's Dead came out, I mean, think about it. All right, like, how old are you? I keep forgetting. I know I've asked you this before.
43.
You're 43. Okay, so you remember this shit too.
Oh yeah.
Um, when like Freddy was every kid's favorite. The guy kills you, you love him. Like,
Halloween costumes,
yep,
Freddy dolls,
yeah,
all sorts of
small children,
toys. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Pajamas and
Uh, and the fucked up thing is, do you remember what they did for promotion for this movie?
off the top of my head, I do not. I have not
Okay,
gone back to see what the promotion was for this.
the promotion for Freddy's Dead was they gave him a fucking funeral
Oh
because
yes, I remember now. Yeah, it's on
I figured it would
Never
jog your
Sleep
memory.
Again.
Yeah, 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 which is a killer documentary if you've got 4 hours on hand. Um, isn't that the one that's like 4 or 5 hours long?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, damn good, damn good. Who is it long? I had to watch it in three different parts.
Yeah.
But yeah, they gave him a funeral. It was star studded. It had as many people as they could get from the cast and the crew from all the movies, because they were like, we're done with this. He's dead. He's gone. And
Hmm.
it's like, man, you people just don't understand how this works. We know this isn't the end.
Yeah.
you know, they did that with Jason twice.
Exactly. I mean, we have
And,
this. I forgot about the funeral, the whole send off. Like everyone from New Line, the executives, actors from throughout the franchise showing up at a Hollywood cemetery
yep,
to do this whole big thing.
for a child murdering, possible child raping character. It's
It's
so fucked.
it's so weird that like the zeitgeist was to take him and put him up on this pedestal. Like he's a slasher icon. And don't get me wrong, he definitely is.
Yeah,
But it's so weird that like in the like now there would not be an icon like that.
no, no.
If
A
the
lot of
2010 remake had done well and there were more movies, he would that version of Freddy would not be marketed the way he is, except to horror fans as like the new version of Freddy, the second
right,
coming.
yeah,
There wouldn't be talking dolls, there wouldn't be a Nightmare on Elm Street TV series, there wouldn't be any of that.
no. It is kind of crazy to think about. That there's a lot of people that I know that have gone back, and they won't hardcore fans. Buddy of mine, he's a does his underground wrestling shit.
Mhm.
He used to be when we were growing up. He was a huge fan of Freddie. Freddie was his favorite, and as he got older and in the recent times, he's just like, I can't. He's like, nah. He's like, I'm not down with that shit anymore. And he's like, they're funny, hokey, fucking pedophile, child killer. Like, nah, I'm not cool with that. And I was like,
Right.
all right, I get it. I mean, he's not even a parent. I ain't, and it's a fucked up, kind of a story plot, to the whole thing, and it definitely changes, your kind of opinions on it. Because as a horror fan, that as a kid, Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, I still hold it in high regards. It's still one of my favorite movies.
Same.
It's still creepy as hell, um, but as they went on, they touched more on. They kind of made it something you couldn't ignore when it came down to the implying thing and all that, and just I don't know, especially okay, talking about Freddy's Dead, like the scene where she goes, like she could see when she was a kid, when you find out that it wasn't John Doe and it's actually um uh
Maggie.
at least yeah, it's
Yeah.
actually her who was the child, and she ends up in her dad's like the basement, his workroom, with all
Right.
his sinister gloves and all that, and you see all these fucking things, and as a kid you're going, oh man, those fucking gloves are cool, I wish he'd use those, and all that stuff, and then when you're older and you watch that and then you think about it and you're like, dude, it's the impliement there is that he has done some that he has and will do horrible things with all those fucked up instruments to children.
Right.
And it's like, don't. Hey, like I said, a lot of emotions when it comes down to this, like back and forth emotions when it comes out of this franchise, and it sucks. Sometimes sometimes there's not enough to where you can ignore it when it comes to certain things, but unfortunately, you know, yeah, this fucking movie is just so back and forth. This franchise, especially,
Right. And I'll say at least with this original franchise, and I'm not talking. We're not covering the remake for this. It's a separate film altogether.
right? Yeah, yeah, exactly.
At least with this franchise, it's only like, I mean, it's heavily implied, but it's only implied that there may be like a sexual abuse aspect to it. But he's mostly just a child murderer
Yeah,
because they
and
never come out and fully say
yeah.
he did
Now,
X, Y, and Z.
well, the fucked up thing is, though, is like, yeah, he never says it. They never say it in the movies. But but every time you watch a documentary about about horror movies or about Freddy, or anything like that, anytime that it's it's uh it's always mentioned. Oh, now for the child molesting, child killer, Freddy Krueger. You know what I mean? And it's like
Right.
they always seem to put that in there when they talk about him a lot of times in movies or in documentaries and shit. And it's like that's enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's a huge impliement. Like the fact that okay, well, the media obviously that's they're the ones that put this shit out. So there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
And then it's just fucked up.
I will say this, at least Freddy Krueger is the product of someone's imagination. Wes Craven dreaming up
Yeah,
this guy who is a child killer who haunts your dreams. It is not, like one of the real life predators we've come to hear about over the years. So at least with Freddy, it is not real. It is made up. I mean, the implications are still very much real world. When you think about it,
yeah,
like that kind of stuff does happen, but at least with these, you can turn them off.
yeah,
I mean, to me, it's different because none of the people involved in the Nightmare franchise have turned out to be someone who has done anything like that. It was purely a concept made up as what's the most terrifying type of thing we could come up with.
yeah,
And there you go.
yeah. Which I mean, it's in all actuality, with the story being what he is, I'm not. I mean, because you want a bad guy. When you have villains, you want to have a bad guy. The thing that makes Freddy kind of a fucked up situation is the fact that is how he's perceived.
Mm-hmm.
How he's been perceived, and back from when we were kids. It's like the dolls are everywhere. Kids are dressing up like all this shit or whatever. I think that the marketing, if they would have marketed it different, um, and maybe if the movies didn't like Freddy's did, like you said, turn him into a complete cartoon character to where like half the time they make you forget what he is because he's being goofy as shit, and then immediately show you,
Yeah.
and it's like, God, what a speedball of a movie this is. It's like one minute you're like, all right, we're going, and it's a bunch of goofy shit nonstop. And then you get like, here's this serious little backstory part here, and then next to now we're gonna go back to the goofy shit, and now we're gonna go back to a little dark. And it's just it's. I think if they would have marketed him different and not make him as such a hero, you know what I mean? Like as some kind of
Mm-hmm.
weird anti-hero, that I think that the story and everything would just make him terrifying and that would be fine. Um, but yeah, because I mean, there's a lot of shit that I won't write or read or watch. Um, but a lot of the stuff I'm a part of, Splatterpunk, uh, is disgusting, and there's a lot of them that I don't know if I want to read. A lot of books out there that there's no holds barred, no one's safe.
Right.
So if you're gonna have a villain, you want him to be the most disgusting. I see what they're going for, but again, the marketing.
Yeah. Yeah, because even as a kid, I knew there was something weird about, well, this guy kills kids. Why are there, toys for kids? Why is he such a big thing?
Right.
But also growing up, all I knew was, oh, this is a guy who was burned alive for something he did by the parents on Elm Street, and now he's exacting revenge by taking out the children who live on Elm Street to torture the parents.
Yeah. That's
That's the
terrifying.
story in part one. And then by part two, we've gone away from that. We kind of bring it back in part three, but that's when we kind of get like Nancy's the big part of it. The house is a big part of it, which the house has nothing to do with Freddy. He never lived there. There was nothing that happened other than that's where Nancy's mom kept the glove after they burned Freddy.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm like, the house really doesn't matter, but the house became such a focus. Even in Freddy's Dead, we go back to the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, so we needed, at some point, there should have been some kind of, and I mentioned this when we were talking about part 4 recently. The house became sort of a nexus point. So there was like the house and the boiler room, and then like the junkyard from part 3 and 4. These were like nexus points of Freddy's power.
Yeah.
In the dream world, which I don't know why that's kind of the case, but it kind of carried on for so long. Just like, it's not like the Myers house in Halloween, where obviously something happened there, so it's a huge character, regardless of how many different houses were seen in that franchise, because they couldn't keep the same fucking one.
Right. Right.
Regardless, the Myers house plays a point. There's a reason Michael went back there. There's really no reason for Freddy to keep going back to this house. So by the time Freddy's Dead comes around, it's like, why are we back here?
Yeah.
We know he terrorized Springwood, but the house really doesn't matter to Freddy. We should be seeing the boiler room.
True.
But
that is very true. Yeah. Which that was one thing about part 2 that I was kind of glad of, because they kind of go back there.
Yeah.
But
I've actually come around on part 2 a lot, and I really do enjoy it. It's different. It breaks the rules, but at the same time, Freddy is still dark. Freddy is still very much a predator.
yeah.
And it's not far off from part 1 in Freddy's portrayal, other than
True.
the possession thing, which I'm like,
Right.
well, if you think about it, if in part 1 he was losing his powers because Nancy turned her back on him and took away his energy, what's the best way for him to come back? Find a way, through any means necessary for him to regain his power, which he kind of also did in Freddy versus Jason. Kind of
Yeah.
took control of Jason and then set him loose. So it's not really far off. Part 2 really kind of does tie in a little more when you start thinking about it. It's weird at first when you see the entire franchise for the first time. But
Yeah.
compared to Freddy's Dead, I'd rather put on part 2 and be like, oh, I'll have some fun with a weird possession version of Freddy than, Freddy's Dead. Although I do enjoy Freddy's Dead. It has its fun parts, but the dark tone with Tracy's character, they
Yeah.
hint at it in the beginning of the movie when like the kids are all at-risk youths.
Oh yeah.
When they're conspiring to get taken to California by one of the van drivers there, one of the drivers for the shelter.
Yeah.
One of the guys mentions something about her dad, and she's like, I see him every time I close my eyes. I'm like, holy fuck. Okay.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Goofy Carlos, who just got a cotton swab in his ear from his mom and lost his hearing, and Spencer's just a pothead.
Yeah.
And it's like,
A
she's got
rich
some
kid.
dark-seated rich kid,
Yeah.
pothead, juvenile delinquent, making pipe bombs. We all had
Yeah.
that friend who was doing shit like this.
Yeah.
The problem
Yeah,
was
some
he
of
had
us
too
were
much
that
time
friend.
on his hands.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had the friends who were like Spencer, who were like, I smoke a ton of weed, I make pipe bombs. I'm like, dude, that sounds cool. I could never do that.
Yeah. I had a whole group of friends there for a while that it was horror movies, pot, and making weapons. Some of those guys are still doing all of that.
Hey, if you find your niche,
Right.
this movie just goes bonkers after the opening. I mean, we get, like I said, we get the dark touches with Tracy, and we get that whole scene with her and her father in the dream world, but like the stuff with John Doe, like he's seeing Freddy as the Wicked Witch from the Wizard of Oz, complete with Wizard of Oz music.
Oh
The
yeah.
actual fucking music from the Wizard of Oz.
Don't be such a pussy.
That woman's actually funny. That line gets me every time. I'm like,
Every
okay.
time. Yep. My buddy that I was talking about, who was a huge fan, when we were younger, he used to say it to me all the time whenever we would argue. Don't be such a pussy, and he would say it just like that. Yeah, and yeah, the Wicked Witch bullshit, and then like the Wile E. Coyote shit
Yeah, when
when
he's
he
pushing
finally
that
kills
bed of
him.
nails. Yeah.
Yeah, like so you're telling me we have like this pretty much like most of this movie. We're being told that this is Freddy's kid, just so we can be told that it's not, and that's cool because twist and everything. But oh god, I think I just hate John Doe in this movie. He is so fucking irritating.
The
He's a
thing
big
was,
baby.
like, his acting is not great, and that's nothing against him. Maybe he's done other stuff that's where he's been better. I don't know. I've never seen him
Hopefully,
in anything else.
right?
But really, the only two, well, three solid actors in this movie are Lisa Zane, Yaphet Kotto, and Robert Englund.
Yep.
Everyone else is kind of like, eh. Like Tracy is like way, she's like over the top with her like, I'm gonna beat the crap out of you because I was abused and I'm angry all the time.
Yeah.
Like, like
Well,
that
she
could be the case for some, but it's like you gotta dial it back a bit because you're wanting to take on everyone.
right, right. She actually we ended up calling her the female Edward Furlong the other night because
Oh,
she kind of acts and talks and even kind of dresses like him, kind of like
oh
John
my
Connor.
God. Now that you say that,
Yeah,
I'm like, yeah. And I
yeah.
guess that actress, Leslie Dean, actually had some shit that this movie kind of brought up, like past traumas that she had to deal with and
Oh,
going
really?
through all that. So I'm like, damn. But the acting is bad. But I'm like, I feel bad for her having to like relive some trauma because she was dealing with that scene and then had her own stuff that kind of came to the surface
That's
while
fucked.
dealing with it. I'm like, ooh. I'm like,
Yeah, I
that
didn't know
makes
about
this
that.
movie even more dark, especially for her.
Yeah,
Like everyone else is goofy, like Carlos and the map, Carlos and the pins and his kill with the increasing sound because he's got the Freddy ear hearing
yeah,
aid.
yeah. Let's actually talk about that for a second. Uh, that scene with the ear, um, is he says one of the most like the phrase in it that I always remember. Nice talk or nice hearing from you, Carlos.
Yep, it's
Um,
actually a clip I've put in the special intro I created for these episodes, just because I love
sweet.
that line.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the beauty that is the beauty of Freddy, is that the kills, there is no limit. And this one they really made sure of that we knew this.
Mhm.
Because Carlos he's got a hearing aid. For those that for whatever reasons listen to this have never seen this, he has a hearing aid, and when he takes it out, he can't hear shit. And he thinks that if he takes it out, he can't hear Freddy, so it's no big deal. Um, well, then Freddy takes it, and he ends up giving it back to him. Except this time, they're like little ear huggers, and they hear extremely well. And he throws a bunch of little pins on a fucking like metal floor and or metal, walkway or whatever, and makes his head explode. Like
Yeah,
that's kind of a cool death. Like, I mean, if you're gonna go balls to the wall with it, like it's probably when it comes to this movie, it's probably I'd say it's my favorite. I think it's my favorite kill in this
it's same, same.
movie. Yeah,
I like it because this whole scene plays out. Carlos can't hear anything. So from his perspective, when you do hear, you hear like his muffled breaths and nothing else.
yeah,
Freddy's behind him, doing the exaggerated motions, banging on stuff, scraping his claws. Carlos can't hear anything. Then, like you said, he gets the hearing aid back. That's what I love because, like, you see the water droplets and they sound just like shotgun blasts.
yeah.
And he's like, nope, we're not doing that. And then he catches the one pin and there's a whole bunch of pins. And then Freddy brings out the chalkboard and starts doing the nails on the chalkboard thing.
Which is miserable. Watching that is miserable.
I
Like,
I can't stand nails on a chalkboard, so every
uh,
time I either suffer through it just for the kill or I mute it until it's over.
well, nails are bad enough. Those are fucking blades, and
Yeah.
he's just scraping the shit out of them. Like not. I think the next time I watch that, and every time I watch that movie, I always say this the same thing, and I always forget about it. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, I need to put this on mute for a second because I just said, yeah, that about killed me. Cause I was sitting here with Whitman and one of my other friends, and we were watching. All of us had this look on our face, like, why don't we turn this part off? Like, turn the
Mhm.
audio off or something. That's a
Yeah,
horrible sound.
because it starts with one. He just takes one claw, one blade, and drags it, and you're like, oh. And then he just goes full ham, making the chalkboard bigger, and then just scratching these claws, or these metal blades all over the board in a circular motion, just
Yeah,
almost like he's like in some way getting some sort of sexual gratification from it.
which he probably is.
Yeah, but
I mean,
Carlos,
I would say he's
Carlos,
definitely a sexual killer in a way. Definitely.
yeah, Carlos's head explosion is actually done really well,
Oh, I agree.
and it's in the boiler room. We go back to the boiler room as the only boiler room kill in this movie.
Yeah, that is true.
I mean, it's a large one, but we're in the boiler room because we're at like Carlos's house in the beginning of the dream, and then it transitions to the boiler room. The metal walkways, the scaffolding, the fog, everything. We know exactly where we're at.
Yeah.
Now, Spencer's death, the death because of drugs.
It doesn't even make sense.
This this is not the PSA for anti-drugs you want because you have no idea how people act when they've smoked pot. They do
They
not
don't.
have an acid trip.
No, they do not.
It's
And it's the cheesiest fucking thing. Like I think this is probably I think the whole scene is probably the cheesiest thing out of all the movies. I would say when it comes down to the
yeah,
kills,
I agree.
because at that time, Nintendo was real big, and I love and it's so weird when he talks about he says like the power glove or whatever.
Hmm.
Because I remember when they used to have like was it called the power? I think it was called the power
It was called the Power Glove, and they wanted to use it for this movie, but
glove.
Nintendo was like, no. So
Yeah, right.
they still got their own version in anyway.
Yeah, like interesting concept. I mean, they have it to where Freddy is making all these psychedelic things happen on this TV that there's nothing going on because Spencer's stoned, and apparently when you smoke weed, apparently he has really good shit. That's what I can come up with is he has like that uber shit that never existed.
Yeah,
Like it's Jesus Christ. Because me and Whitman were talking about that too. We're like, man, they were so wrong about how that works. Unless Freddy was just giving him visuals.
true.
But then he also makes him into a fucking video game,
Yeah.
and
I mean, it starts off with him seeing Johnny Depp on the screen doing the, this is your brain on drugs. And
yeah,
then Freddy shows up and goes, hey, Spencer, let's trip out. I'm like, that's not how weed works.
right,
They did a more accurate thing in Freddy versus Jason, where they were just smoking and getting high.
yeah.
But, that movie's coming. That movie's coming.
Well, I think they probably like at that time period. I mean,
The demonization of pot was a lot more strong than it is now, I believe.
oh yeah. I mean, people. I think people these days, are a little more educated to it and realize that is not how that works. Although
Yeah.
there are people out there that are the straight lacers or the old schoolers that the old folks that still think it's the devil's lettuce for a reason and whew, stupid shit. But yeah,
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I don't hear about people getting, smoking a bunch of pot and going out and shooting up places or,
all
beating
right,
the shit out of people on the street. No, we're people who smoke pot are usually going to 7-Eleven or ordering pizza.
yeah, and watching horror movies.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I did.
I, it ain't hurting nobody.
Yeah. Whenever I'm able to partake, I'm sitting here going, what snacks do I have? I'm not thinking, where can I get an assault rifle?
Yeah, no, that's the furthest thing from my mind
Yeah.
whenever I'm in that state. Yeah,
It's like
it's
now meth, that might lead you down the other path, but
yeah, Yeah, meth, PCP, things of that, and angel
Yeah.
dust. I can understand that, but no, it's kind of like what Robin Williams said on his comedy on Broadway uh,
Hmm.
video, which was one of my favorite stand-ups. Um, he's talking about weed, and he's like, weed can do a lot of things. It can make sex better. It can make da da da, whatever. He's like, but it sure as fuck doesn't make you empowered. And he's like, because he was talking about the old dude that got, he's a snowboarder that got kicked off the Olympics because he tested positive for weed.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like, and Robin Williams was like, yeah, you're fucking not, you're definitely not fucking empowered. He's like, the only way that you're gonna end up being like faster than everybody else if there's a Snickers bar at the end of that ride.
Right.
And
It's
it's the truth.
exactly. It's why I had a big issue like when you know the Olympics over Michael Phelps when people were like, "Oh, he was smoking pot before the competition." I'm like, that put him
Who
at a
cares?
disadvantage.
We're not gonna talk about disadvantages now.
Like he was only swimming that fast because somebody had a cheeseburger on the other side of the pool, man.
He was just thinking about dinner time.
Yeah,
Like
it's like the
that's
sooner I get this done, the sooner I can have some mac and cheese.
like the only thing that probably like that happened if he would happen to be high when he was or had smoked while earlier on or whatever before swimming was probably just that he just had even more fun of a time doing it,
Yeah, he
which is
didn't feel
probably
any.
why he won.
He wasn't stressed out. He was relaxed.
Yeah,
He got enough to keep him relaxed, not so much to where he got paranoid, which I've been there.
no, we all have.
Ugh. But the anxiety that comes with getting a little too far gone.
Yeah,
But yeah, the
you
portrayal
know
in this movie, and I think the video game stuff is kind of dumb.
it is.
Like whole thing with him running through and going, "Oh, Super Spencer," and trying to fight his dad in the game. I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't know. If Freddy would have just maybe controlled him as if he was a video game character, because they showed him playing. Well, they didn't even show him really playing video games. They showed him playing a Tiger handheld electronic game, which we all know is not a true video game. But
right, yeah.
yeah,
Oh man, I
man.
remember those.
Yeah, I had a couple of those, and now I'm like, oh, those sucked.
I had the Batman one. I had the original Michael Keaton, Jack
Hmm.
Nicholson Batman one.
I remember that
I
one. Friend of
love
mine
that
had
thing.
that one. Friend of mine had that
Oh,
one.
dude.
I had not a Tiger one, but I had one by Acclaim, and it was a Simpsons one.
I knew some kids that had that one.
Yeah, I had
Yeah,
one. It was Bart, and you had to like catch the cupcakes or something.
yeah, yeah.
And I remember it distinctly because it was so different. I was like, "This is cool." And now I'm looking back, I'm like, "How bored was I as a kid?"
It was simpler times, so
Yeah,
simpler games where, we didn't have to stress out too much and just
yeah.
play our shit.
Play that, or if you had a Game Boy, I just think if they hadn't done the sequences of him in the video game, and it was just
Mhm.
Freddy controlling him as a character, maybe it would have worked better.
Yeah,
Because I don't know, the visual representation of him in a video game was, mm,
like I see what they were going for.
yeah, I get they're
You
going for the.
know,
It's just, mm, I don't know. Like
it falls
nowadays, of
flat.
course, we could do it better. Nowadays, of course, it could be done better because you could actually. But this was 1990 when they were making this movie, so
I would say if they were, I know it will never happen, but if they were to make it today, I would say that they'd probably put him in something like a Resident Evil or a first person shooter or some sort.
I don't know.
Like
He'd be in Fortnite.
you know what, that would actually probably be the case. I can see that 100%. Or Mortal Kombat,
Now,
something
see,
along
you
those
stick
lines.
somebody in Mortal Kombat, that would be fun.
Yeah, kind of.
See, because then, not to bring it back to Friday 4,
Right.
but a couple episodes ago we did Friday 4, and there's that whole scene where Rick fights Invisible Freddy with the karate and all that. Now, see, you're saying Mortal Kombat, that would actually make sense for a
Yeah.
scene like that, where you have someone who's training to fight, and then you have Freddy who's like, well, I can fight whatever style I want because I'm in the dream world. I control
Uh,
this bitch.
which real quick, I know we're not talking about four, but you just mentioned it. Um, is that not like one of the like the coolest fucking songs, like of any of these movies. That when Duder is practicing his karate shit, and
I do like that song when he's practicing his karate, and then Alice later on is like getting, all her powers together and getting ready, and they're playing that song again. I'm
yeah, dude.
yeah, this works.
I'll give
This
you
works.
diamonds, give you pills, I'll give you anything you want. $100 bills. I mean, it's so punk rock. Like for that topic, it was good.
Yeah,
It's a given.
it definitely works for that movie. And for the longest time, I was like, I didn't know what the song was. Like, was this just written for the, not knowing it was actually, a real song?
Right.
But it works. It definitely works because it's like his theme. It's like her brother Rick's theme, and then it goes to her when she's got all those powers from everybody else. I'm like, the fact you're hitting that note again
Yeah.
is nice.
Right. Right.
I
Hell
didn't
yeah.
do any of that in Freddy's Dead.
No. They did, the one thing about Freddy's Dead that was interesting, is they did try to give you a little bit more into the backstory of some things.
Right. And
Um,
we get to that point. That's we can
yeah,
just jump there because there's not really a whole lot. I mean, we have what Yaphet Kotto is a doctor who studies dreams, who thinks he can reach the kids through dreams. So basically we have him kind of doing the Nancy thing
yeah.
in a sense from part 3.
Which I thought that for the longest time as a kid, I thought that was Duder from the third one. The hell you
I
are,
wish I wish that would have been Kincaid.
Kincaid. Yeah, yeah. That dude on Video Store Clerks. We do this thing where we have random clips of the week.
Mhm.
And one favorite clip of ours to show is it's the scene where Kincaid, they're all in the dream state, or I don't know if they're in the dream state where, but Kincaid's getting like they're coming in to like settle him down or whatever, and he's all pissed off, and he's
Mhm.
all like they're like, you're gonna come with us. He's like, the hell I am, or whatever, and he goes crazy for they throw him in the hole. Like I don't know, for something about that scene, it's just hilarious. That like his reaction to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I always thought he was him and Freddy's Dead. And then a few years ago, I rewatched it and I was like, wait a minute, that's funny because he could be like
Yeah.
I could totally they should have done that like in some way, shape, or form. Like I know because like Kincaid died, right? Did he die?
Right. Yeah, he was
Yeah,
killed off in the beginning of part 4.
that's right. That's right. Like they could have. I don't know. It's just there was too many similarities there. Like it would have made sense, but yeah. Like I don't know, a twin brother. I mean,
Like,
come on, if you're gonna be fucking goofy, might as well. It's just twin brother. That's why he's here.
yeah. I mean, to give us a little more, I mean, Freddy in Freddy's Dead is basically hitting there's a lot of points made in this film that kind of reference the franchise throughout. Like him
Yeah.
driving the bus is a nod to part 2. There's
Mhm.
so many things that are nods to the entire franchise, but had you maybe had this character, even this same actor could have played an older version of Kincaid. You didn't have to kill Kincaid in part 4. You could have killed Joey. And Kincaid could have been like, you know what? I'm just getting the hell out of Springwood. Screw this. I'm tired of this bullshit.
Yeah.
And then he could have been like, it's still happening. You could have brought him back into this, and he could have said, I've got ties to this guy too.
Yeah.
You don't know what I know. I can help you figure this out. And it would have made it a little better, that little bit of like, oh, like Nancy came back in 3. You could have had Kincaid come back in this one and be like,
Yeah.
I've learned how to control my dreams. I've learned how to harness my power even more. I can teach you. I can help you.
Yeah.
But instead, we just got this guy beating Freddy with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
So it's
Um,
like, okay.
which which actually I gotta say something real quick.
Mhm.
I'm gonna have to go back because we talked about like we mentioned Freddy's Revenge a few times, and
Mhm.
because you mentioned the school bus. That is probably as a kid that was probably one of the creepiest scenes because anytime that it was like, it was a rainy, stormy like morning, rainy day, and it's all gray outside, I always thought about that while I was in the back of the bus, just like hoping that Freddy doesn't just pop out and kill us all.
I can see that. I can see
Yeah.
that. Yeah, especially if you've seen, the opening bus scene and the closing bus scenes of part 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
if you caught that as a kid, it'd be like, oh, I don't want to ride the bus.
Yeah,
It's like if the bus is speeding up, you're like, oh shit, okay, this is how it starts.
yeah, yeah. Well, the funny thing is though, is there was a point, there was a time, there was a tornado going through my neck of the woods as a kid. I was in fifth grade, and I remember it was fucking horrible out. We had been on the bus for fucking almost an hour. I only lived like literally down the road from my school,
Mhm.
but we had to go another area or whatever. Our bus got trapped between two power lines,
Oh no.
and because we were picking somebody up or something, or we had to stop, and they happened to fall. Like it was bad. And then as we got going, after like 20 minutes, like later, a tree fell down right behind the bus as we were moving.
Holy
And th-
shit.
yeah, and then we got to school. My dad was there to pick me up because they had already kind of said like, look, kids can stay here. Like the power was out and everything at the school, so kids were just drawing and shit. You know, the fun
Mhm.
days of school. And my dad
Right.
picked me up, and he was like, well, we got to go home. I've got a mess to clean up tomorrow. And I was like, what's up? He goes, we no longer have a pool. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, our pool is in 5 different yards, and somebody's shack full of tools is in our backyard now. That's no shit. There was a
Holy
full
shit.
size shed full of chainsaws, crowbars, screwdrivers, hammers, all that shit that blew from our neighbor's yard and smashed right in the middle of ours. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
That's Jesus.
Yeah. It was pretty
That's
brutal. But
nuts.
yeah, that was one of those times where I thought about that specific scene. You know, sorry about the
Yeah.
story time, but yeah.
No, I could see that. That's no, you're good. That's an interesting story and how it ties in. 'Cause that's oof.
Oh yeah. Crazy good times. Good times.
Yeah. So you touched on it a bit, and that we get some of the backstory of Freddy. Like we've known for a while that, he's the son of 100 maniacs. Amanda Kruger the nun is his mother. She worked at an asylum type place. We know that he was a child murderer, burned alive, exacting revenge. What we never got was parts of his childhood, which we get in this.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
Um. Well, that's actually a fun thing to talk about because I kind of thought about that the other day when we were watching it. Because the whole thing about what they made it try to sound like in Freddy's Dead was that Freddy did all this because they took his daughter away from him,
Right.
and and that was the whole point. Um. But oh, hold on, I lost my thought. Shit. Um. Yeah, no, they made they made it sound like that was why he did all what he did. And if that was the case, he wouldn't have been a psychopath as a kid.
Right.
That would have been like something that would have happened years later when he snapped and took his kid away from him. But they don't. They make him seem like, oh, he's just a psychopath from day one, smashing hamsters and Alice Cooper scene, where Alice Cooper's his dad, and he's whipping him with the belt, and he's like, "There's no pain," and whatever
Right.
the fuck, and so it's they kind of didn't have anybody. I wonder with these movies sometimes, did they not have somebody to reread the script like a couple of times at least and go, this is kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like, or this doesn't make sense, or we probably shouldn't do that. We see it all the time in film, especially in horror movies. But
Hmm.
this one definitely is just like you didn't have a proofreader on set, like that. Come on, like
Yeah.
I guess maybe that nobody wants to. There's probably a lot of like yes guys there. Oh, is this good? Oh, this is great. This is wonderful. Oh, this is definitely that kind of shit.
Right. Like I think they just played into like we knew the son of 100 maniacs. So they're like, oh, that means he had to be messed up from birth, so he's gonna be this little psychopath his whole life. Like if you would have made it just a little bit like there was some kind of event in his childhood that really messed him up, that might have actually been better than just showing him as, oh, he's just been messed up since birth.
Right? Yeah.
It's like, well, we kind of know that, but if you gave us a little bit more, like he didn't start out that way, but some condition, some trauma really screwed with his head and thus led him down this path. even if it was he was introduced to something where he was carrying on work that started with his own father or something,
Yeah.
as opposed to he was abused as well as already, killing small animals. I'm like, so he's Rob Zombie's Michael Myers essentially before Rob Zombie did Halloween.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I mean, because I mean, I mean, to me, it makes more sense that, okay, he was just born bad. Because, I mean, in a lot of cases, that's how that goes.
Right.
Um, and for the mythos of Freddy, I would much rather him just be like a product of somebody else's fucked upness, instead of him being a vengeful father.
Yeah, which
like I don't like because you also because where you're at this point, you're in part 6, you're at Freddy's dead, the story, the mythos of him, what he is accused of, what he did, what he's done, and his daughter. It makes you wonder because he had all that stuff down there before they took her from him.
yeah.
So it's like, did he he was? I mean, he was obviously killing before then, but was he what? They never touched on that too much either. Like, they actually didn't touch on it really at all. But it was like, did they do did he fuck with his own kid? Like, you almost get that kind of feeling, like the whole scene where she's like, where she's a little girl
Right.
and she's in the pigtails and all that shit. She's wearing like a little yellow dress. Like, there is something completely disturbing and almost hard to watch about that scene. Like, it's just because oh, I don't know. You kind of put your mind as a kid, and it's just imagining that. I don't know. It's just really fucked up, and it doesn't make any goddamn sense. And it was
Yeah.
even worse. It was even worse when old girl, uh, she turns into an adult version, but with still wearing kid clothes.
Yeah, an adult version of the dress she was wearing as a kid. It was really like, ooh.
Yeah, like, I really question Shay and whatever his name is that had part of this movie being released when it comes down to certain parts of the story.
Yeah. It was really weird because it kind of implies that maybe she was going to be next, and the mother was afraid when she saw it, but was like, I'm not gonna say anything because I'm afraid you'll kill me, which Freddy killed his wife anyway.
Right.
To me, it makes more sense that Freddy was just could have been a loner because we never knew anything about a family from the get-go. We knew
Yeah.
he was a child murderer. He possibly took them to this boiler room to commit his crimes. The parents found out. He was released on a technicality from going to jail, so vigilante justice, they burned him alive, and he swore he would exact revenge.
Yeah.
That's the story we grew up with. Now in this one, they're like, oh, but he also had a daughter and he was killing children at home. I'm like, but what about the boiler room?
Yeah. Right.
Where did that go?
Yeah. Like, we didn't need him having a family. Like, I didn't need that aspect of Freddy.
No.
Like, he's already technically terrifying enough. We don't need to add on the extra little creepiness, or creeperness, or whatever you want to call it, of, oh, he had a family and he may or may not have whatever with his kid, and it's like it's the more we talk about it, the more irritating it actually is. It's like, that doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Yeah, even if they would have done something really revealed, oh, part of the story you didn't know was that he had a wife and daughter, and once this all got found out what he was doing, they left. So don't have him kill his wife. Have his wife be one that, took the daughter away and was part of that mob that
Right.
killed him when he was released. If you would have said that and been like, she was there that night, she took the daughter away that very same night, and they left town.
Right.
And then we find out Maggie is that daughter. I'm like, okay, I'd be a little more forgiving of that because you gave us something in one of those flashbacks she saw.
That would be a little more thought. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Totally agree on
I
that.
mean, would it still be a better movie? Maybe not, but at least would have given a little bit more motivation for her.
Yeah.
Be like finally figuring this out and going, oh, that's why we left when I was little. I remember leaving my hometown, but I never knew why. I was
Right.
too young to put everything together. Then we could
Yeah.
get those pieces, and then you could have him kill John Doe in front of her, like, yeah, I just used this little piggy to get to you. I just needed
Yeah.
him to bring you home to daddy. Something like that. And
They could have really like. I mean, if they really did believe this was going to be the last one. I mean, like like we talked about, they had the whole fucking funeral for him and everything. Like
yeah,
they should have. I just feel like they really could have done a whole lot more with this, and they could have really, um, yeah, changed the story around a little bit. Make it make more sense. I don't know why. Like, I mean, I'm okay with franchises trying new things sometimes, or but not killing the mythos, not destroying what we know of the killer,
right.
or the characters or whatever, but just kind of adding a little something new, or a little fresh. Okay, fine, that's okay. But going back to Jason Goes to Hell, which I actually am a fan of that movie, as weird as it
Same.
fucking is.
Same here.
Um,
It's
Good.
it's batshit insane, but you know what? I'm like, they tried something new. It didn't completely work, but we got Creighton fucking Duke out of that movie, okay?
I think of a little girl in a pink dress, hot dog going through a donut.
It's like,
What the fuck?
what the fuck does that mean?
See, yeah, it's like we don't even know who this fucking guy is. But yeah, it's the same thing. It's like after a while, it's the same kind of. All right, we already know. It's like when you do marathons of these fucking movies. Okay, um, like every Friday the 13th. Like, of course, I'm watching my favorites, or I'm starting from one,
Mm-hmm.
and going on until I pass the fuck out. Um, but God, these movies are like extra hard to get through all the way. Like if you're trying to do a marathon on these, you only get to about 3 or 4, and you're like, I need a break.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I did it over a couple of days. I did it over a weekend, so I watched like 1 through 3, and then I did 4 through. I think that box set had up to New Nightmare at the time
Yeah,
because that was
yeah, I
released
did.
before Freddy versus Jason. So then I watched those ones, and I was like, man, like the first 3, you're good, and then when you get from 4 to 6, you're like, you can see the quality go down, and
Hmm.
then New Nightmare is where it like reinvigorates Freddy, but it's not even like it's still a part of the franchise in my own eyes
Oh,
because it
yeah,
deals
I
with
think so
people,
too.
but it's such a different version. But I still appreciate it. But yeah,
I love that one actually.
this is one of the series that's hard to get through. Like even Halloween, Halloween has its own problems in its
Hmm.
franchise. So I kind of
Oh
like
yeah,
Nightmare and Halloween for me. It's like I can do it over a couple of days, but I can't do it in one sitting. Friday the 13th, I could start it at 7 in the morning and watch all those movies all day long. I
yeah,
that's
yeah.
my favorite franchise. I have that Scream Factory box set sitting over here on my shelf. It's like
Nice.
my pride and joy. I was able to get it with all the posters and everything. Not that I'm bragging. I'm just like I was able at one point to do something like that. I was like, this is the one
Hell
franchise
yeah.
I'm doing it for.
I get it, man. Like I'm definitely a Jason guy. And what's weird is, for the longest time when I was like, up until about probably about 10 years ago, or so, I was more of a Freddy guy.
Mhm.
And then as I got older, I started realizing, I can get to the Friday the 13th movies, a lot easier. Me and my buddies, a couple of years ago, we had 3 days. I was kid free, for a few days. I went and stayed with my buddy, and we spent 3 days of, hammering, shots of, whiskey, uh, chugging beers, smoking blunts, and watching every last piece of footage that you can find of Friday the 13th movies. And when I say that, I mean from one all the way to the fan films that were out at that moment.
Yeah, that
And whew,
that sounds like
that
a fun time.
honestly, what was really fun about it was the fact that, it was 3 of us guys, and
Mhm.
they all kept saying they were going to stay up, stay up. I beat them every night. I was the one that was up. I was like, you don't understand. I don't sleep.
Yeah.
And but yeah, they're those are more fun, and you can get through more. The Freddy movies, the Nightmare movies, they're good for a time. And with the Halloween movies, I got to say this because I'm a big Halloween guy too.
Mhm.
With the Halloween movies, at least you get that break. Like you watch Halloween 1, Halloween 2, which are my two favorites,
Mhm.
and then you have 3, which I love Halloween 3. But it's
Same.
different. It's different. You get a break from Michael Myers and the same old shtick. You have something a little different. And then that way you're a little bit refreshed. So when you watch 4, which I love 4, and then when you get to 5, you're not as you're
Yeah.
right. Like it doesn't make a goddamn lick of sense. They could have went a totally different way with number 5, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. 5 also has the comedic cops that come into clown music.
Yes.
Much like you were talking about Last House on the Left. It's like, why is this a thing?
Right.
We don't need that. We know the cops are mostly inept in these movies. We know that.
Right.
I mean,
They're
I
never
think
bright.
probably with the exception of the sheriff in Friday Part 6. Even though he dies, he's like the only effectual cop. It's like the only cop that's trying to get something done.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually, what's real funny about that, when we went to the camp, um, the director, Tommy McLaughlin,
Mhm.
he was there. He hung out with all of us for about a day and a half, and
Oh, nice.
he walked us around and told us different stories about where this was shot and where that was shot. And he took us over there behind the cabin where the sheriff gets bent in half. And apparently, from what he told us, that was actually a bit that because he worked on the Dick Van Dyke Show when he was younger,
Mhm.
and apparently that was a bit that they were going to do on Dick Van Dyke, where somehow, so I can't remember I can't remember if it was Dick Van Dyke's character or another character was going to be like basically bent backwards, but the comedy element they said never came through. It just seemed too serious. So when he was writing the script or whatever, and when he was trying to think of a good kill, he said that was the influence for that one.
That makes
Just a little
sense.
info.
That makes
Yeah,
a lot of sense.
yeah.
So like I said, I've watched this movie 2 more times to prepare for this and realizing after each watch I don't need to watch it. This is not a heavy movie aside from those heavy parts that are
Yeah.
very minimal. I will say this, the effects work is really good aside from the video game sequence. The practical effects work for like the kills and stuff. It's
Oh
actually
yeah.
pretty well done.
Oh yeah. There's definitely good. I mean, there's definitely good points about this movie. There's good parts in it. There's some interesting kills. Overall, I mean, in general, the whole movie is just a big mess.
Yeah.
Um, but I got one of my favorite parts though in it is where Freddy is talking to the Kid K looking dude. What's his name
Mhm.
again? What's his name?
Oh, he's Dr. He's just referred to as Doc in the movie. The actor is Yaphet Kotto.
Oh, okay, all right. But they're talking, and then Freddy goes through like the whole list of they tried to burn me, and he cuts his finger off. They tried to they tried to bury me. He's just doing the classic chopping his fingers off
Right.
with each kill that he mentions. I don't know, for some reason that because it goes back to the original.
Right.
You know,
It's a little callback. Like I said, there's so many little hallmarks that call back. That's one that
right?
was really good. It goes, they even and here my favorite. They even tried holy water,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which
The classic Freddy trope.
yeah, which I will say I did like the idea of like the holy water being used and him buried in consecrated ground, like from part 3.
Yeah,
Because it kind of goes back to the classic universal monsters kind of thing, like defeating a monster with the cross, like the stake through the heart, things, simple things, or
yeah,
like this belief in a faith that this good that can conquer the evil.
yeah,
I'm not a religious person myself, but I've always liked that dynamic of good versus evil and like those classic horror films. So the fact that he kind of touched on that in one of these worked. The fact that
yeah.
it didn't work shows you just how messed up it is.
Oh, completely. And you can't forget about the sperm skeleton flying around demon things in the 3D sequence.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
get to that. They're so weird.
That was around the time when they started using like CGI and shit, and a lot more in horror movies. And at that, like now we've got the technology where
Yeah.
CGI doesn't look too horrible sometimes. Back
If
then, it
they
never looked good.
no. I mean, these things, there's a number of things you could have done. You could have just done animation,
Yeah.
but they were like, we got to use CG. It's this new cutting edge technology. I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah, and there's a reason it always looked bad because we didn't have the equipment to render it properly.
I mean, also they could have like made them a little bit more intimidating looking. I mean, if they're these things that are possessing Freddy or whatever the hell, like they're all like they're like the hyenas on Lion King.
They reminded me of something you would have seen on Sesame Street. They were like Muppets.
Right. Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
and they have like the weird voices and shit. And it's just like, what the hell is this even? What are you doing right
yeah, like when they were laughing at the end when Freddy blows up and they escape, they're like with like these weird voices. I'm like,
now?
these are
Yeah.
not scary. They're not frightening. You made them come off as like just mischievous little demon things.
Which I mean, I get it, but come on, again, somebody wasn't there to like that day. The usual guy. That's what I always chalk it up to is that the guy that's usually there to make sure that stupid shit doesn't go in movies is at some point he's not there a day, and they just go
Mhm.
ahead and do it. You know what I mean? Because that part's pretty fucking stupid. It
Even the
really
first
is.
time I saw it, I'm like, this is so dumb. I've always thought I would have just preferred if that scene where they show him being burned,
Hmm.
if they would have just done something where he had like a monologue, just yelling, like,
Yeah.
I'll get my revenge, I'll get my vengeance. Your children aren't safe. They'll never be safe. You
Right.
won't. My physical form may be gone, but you'll see
Yeah.
something that's like, oh, okay, as opposed to, oh, it's a supernatural thing. He's just another ghost or demon thing. It's like that was never implied. It was implied that his need for vengeance against these people was so driving that it created this evil entity.
Yeah.
I mean, it was still supernatural in nature, but it wasn't like demons or something like that. It really wasn't explained.
Right. You just have to assume, like, use your own imagination of what it is.
Yeah. It's like Jason's never been explained, but I know it's like, oh, he doesn't die.
Yeah.
Like the most
Just
they've
tell us
done
that.
is like Jason X. Well, I mean, Jason Goes to Hell. They gave us like this body swapping demon thing.
Yeah. Right.
But like in Jason X, they're like, oh, he can regenerate. I'm like, yeah, I buy that. Look at part
Yeah.
7. He's
Yeah.
decaying, but he's still basically in one piece and ripping motherfuckers in half. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Thinking about it, that's kind of an oxymoron, kind of, isn't it?
It,
He's rotting away, but yet he has the strength to keep
yeah,
carrying on. Because by part 7, he was already. I mean, 6, is when he gets. He pretty much got Frankenstein,
yeah.
and which is that's where they got. That's where he got the idea from. That is Frankenstein. And
Hmm.
so he becomes the quote unquote zombie Jason, which Tom McLaughlin says he is not a zombie, and he was very adamant about that. But
I don't buy into the zombie part either, simply because like there are okay, side thing. There are typical tropes to zombies, whether it be voodoo or the Living Dead version of zombies.
yeah,
Jason doesn't really abide by any of those rules. Jason to me seems to be like he was the mountain man who didn't die, essentially,
mm,
but then the love for his mother to avenge his mother's death created this unstoppable force
boy's best
that
friend is
just
his
keeps
mother.
coming.
Right.
Exactly. It just keeps coming. It's like taking the relationship in Psycho and going, but this person will never die. They'll just keep coming
Yeah.
and coming and coming. It is unrelenting. It is So like when you get to Freddy versus Jason, it's like the irresistible force meets the immovable object.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh shit, okay. Yeah, I just never bought the zombie things. I'm like, well, there's certain things with the zombie that Jason doesn't do. They're like, but
Yeah.
he's a corpse that's walking around. That's a zombie. I'm like,
Well,
partially correct, but
Tom McLaughlin said that he's not a zombie. He's a reanimated.
I'm
So
okay with that.
I'll go with that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can dig that. And it's also just gives me another thing to argue with people when they're like, "Oh, he's a zombie." I'm like, "Well, the director told me."
yeah.
Yeah,
It's like I was at the
because I'm that
camp.
kind of dick.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like,
I was
if
at summer
you
camp.
yeah, you've got that, and I'm like, I've watched Crystal Lake Memories like 3 times all the way through. I've heard him speak of this.
Yeah,
Because I think even there he mentions like, no, he's resurrected by lightning. That's, like a reanimated creature. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. You don't call
yeah.
Frankenstein's monster a zombie.
No,
Is that
just
just
like
because at some point he's articulate and can speak? But
right. Well, I mean, it's also like going down to like reanimator. It's like it's they're kind of zombies, but they're also they're not brought back in a way like they're it's by a serum, so they're not
yeah,
like I don't know. It's just kind of it's just like they're reanimated.
yeah,
Like it's
that I could see a little bit more of like people going, well, they're zombies. That could be, well, they're zombie-esque.
right.
I mean, they are dead bodies that are reanimated in some way, but it's by reagent. It's not by some inexplicable thing or a satellite or whatever the explanation for Romero zombies ever actually was. I don't think we ever got one, and
The
it's not voodoo either. So
the closest thing that we got to an understanding of what happened when it comes down to the Romero zombies was George C. Romero. He put out the Rise, which was a heavy metal comic. He actually put out two different ones, but one of them was the Rise, which um, is the prequel to Night of the Living Dead. And
okay,
he said that it was one thing that his dad before his dad died, it was like one of the only things his dad like really was he gave him the thumbs up on and said that was really awesome. Like that's really 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 cool to way to put it. And I think in that it's been a minute since I've read it, but I think in that one it goes more towards like the radioactive kind of thing, but there's a little bit more extra to it. But yeah, sorry
okay.
me going all big long thing. But
No,
yeah,
no, no. That's fine. That's fine because I never heard that before. So that's interesting.
yeah,
And I find it interesting that Freddy is really the only slasher of this era that had a personality. He was the only one that really spoke. I mean, Jason, silent. Michael Myers, silent. Freddy, boisterous personality, wisecracks. As the
the
series progressed, I mean,
the
of those
closest
of those three,
the
was
closest you
he?
come to though is Chucky.
Yeah, Chucky is the only other one who's like, no, no, no. I also have a personality.
Yeah,
But before we
Chucky's
got
funnier.
Chucky, yeah, Chucky's always been more of a wisecracking kind of
Right.
dark
Like,
humor
where's
here
the
and there.
Chucky versus Freddy movie? Where's that movie?
Holy shit.
Fucking Freddy just kicking Chucky around over and over again till fucking Tiff comes in and fucking falls in love with both of them.
You're
Like,
both
I
just
mean,
so crazy.
yeah. And then that becomes a whole different type of movie. But yeah,
No.
then it becomes kink porn and you know, midget porn and shit.
Mm. Oh, oh. I don't want to think about Freddy having his way with the plastic doll.
And you know he would too. You know he would.
Well, I mean, it's better than him doing it to children. So
Well, yeah, that is very true.
yeah. There's one other thing that I found really weird. Before we get to the point of wrapping up or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
how Freddy crosses the line to like move on. He goes into his daughter's brain, like,
Yeah,
and then nothing happens. He just is in the dream world again. I'm like, wait a minute, we could have done a callback to part 2 where he was possessing her.
that would have made more
and
sense.
and then you could have had her kill John Doe, freak out everyone else, and then do
Yeah.
an homage to that splitting of, the dream sequence where he comes out of Jesse, do something similar to that.
He's inside me, Grady. I'm
I'm not,
sure he is, Jesse. I'm sure he is.
I'm not gonna lie,
Uh,
I really do enjoy that scene. It's
it cracks me up every time, though. See, the thing is that there was not really any. There wasn't too many like tie-ins to two, because if I remember correctly, two was not a favorite of like the franchise itself. Pretty much, like
yeah,
blackballed the second one, and
yeah,
which is why old dude made that documentary, and he tries to use his Freddy being in that movie, that one movie, um as being, well, he was in other movies too, but that was like the only movie that like I can think of at the top of my head that he was in. But he didn't have a very good relationship with the cast and crew, from what I remember on documentaries and shit.
yeah.
He's a bit of an asshole from what I gather. Did you ever watch this documentary?
You're talking about Mark Patton's documentary, The Scream
Yeah,
Queen? Yeah, I
yeah.
did. I did watch it. I've watched it a couple of times actually.
It really, because I started watching it, and I actually like stopped about halfway through, because like he just, I don't know, he just came off to me like a whiny ass in a lot of ways,
And
and
see,
it just seemed
I
out like a dick.
I can see that. I didn't take it that way. I took it as he was more someone who was kind of betrayed by the writer in a sense of part two, because the
Yeah,
writer blatantly put in these overtones. There was no subtext. It was blatant on the page, regardless. I think, regardless of what anyone will tell you, even when
yeah,
most of the people working on the film were like, well, yeah, we were wondering. The director was like, I had no idea. I'm like, there's a possibility you didn't. You could just be that naive. It's,
right,
as far as the writer, I think with him putting that stuff in and then coming out and going, oh, well, it wasn't my writing. The actor was just too gay. I'm like, he
right,
wasn't out, so you didn't really have a right to say that. So I
right.
think more he's just like he felt
Jaded,
betrayed and
yeah,
jaded and like, you know what? I'm just angry at what happened because I might have had a more illustrious career after this.
right,
Not
right, and
saying not
and
saying part two was going to open doors for him, but he may have got more work them seeing, because I don't think he's bad in the movie at all.
no, actually, he's not. He really isn't.
It can be taken two ways. So I can see where you see what you're seeing, and then I see it a different way. It's all up to interpretation.
Yeah, and maybe I need to go back and actually just finish watching the thing, and maybe have a different opinion. I can get that. I can, because I'm kind of a bitter person when it comes down to certain shit, and that's a big deal. I think my whole thing is like, okay, you piss all over the franchise and all that shit or whatever, but now it's your claim to fame. Like it's you go like you're like, oh, I'm Jesse from this movie that I badmouthed for years. I think that part of it, you know what I mean? But
Yeah,
overall, like I get it. All aspects of it, I get it too. I mean, fuck, if you can make a buck, make a buck, you know.
yeah,
So, but I feel like I need to go back and rewatch it, because I do. I know we're because I mean, honestly, we're talking about Freddy 2 a lot. I
yeah,
see Freddy 2, but Freddy's Revenge.
yeah,
Yeah, and we're probably talking about Freddy's Dead. So maybe I need to to go back and just, because I'm not gonna lie, it's the least watched out of whenever I watch them.
yeah.
But to be
It was for me for a long time too, and I've watched it more recently, especially for doing this, retrospective thing we're doing here. But
Yeah, and it wasn't. And let me go ahead and make this note. It's not because of the gay overtones. That had nothing to do with it. I just, for some reason, it. I guess I was always just so caught up in the fact that it was like, whoa, way off script here. What do you mean he could do this shit? Which, it was only the second movie, so
mhm.
there's a little bit of experimenting. But yeah, the writer, uh, I, how could how could you not know what you were writing?
Yeah,
Like, that's pretty. I mean, he's jumping around on the bed with a pop gun on his crotch, and he's very,
yep,
very flamboyant about it. And and the whole "he's inside me, Grady," and there's a couple of, I mean, and not to mention, we can't forget about the fucking coach.
Yeah,
As
the
a
leather
kid, that
bar.
was a very awkward scene. As a kid, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, of course, as a kid, I watched these movies way younger than I should have. But as a kid, who had already been, watching Up All Night and shit with, Rhonda Shear and fucking Gilbert Godfrey. All right, Gilbert. Was it Gilbert Godfrey? Yeah.
Right. Gilbert Gottfried,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. Up All Night. What is that smell? But yeah, so I'd seen the B movies with the scantily clad girls running around every 5 seconds and like that,
Right.
and the AO. So it was weird for me to see a movie that was Freddy, and it just be like, oh well, there's this coach that is in a leather bar, and I don't even know what a leather bar is. I'm like 5. What the fuck is this? Like it's just
Yeah.
I think it kind of fucked me up as a kid. It was when you're young and you're not really sure of the world, and you kind of dive into these kind of movies, and they kind of has that kind of thing, and you're like, I don't what because I don't think that I think I watched most of the other ones before I even got to the second one originally. To be perfectly honest with you,
Hmm.
so it was kind of it was a weird uh it was a weird thing to see after going back and watching 4 and 5 and all that shit, and then going back and seeing 2. It's like
Yeah. Like
kind of weird.
two I don't remember ever being on TV. One was definitely on TV, but it was mostly 3, 4, and 5. And then later on, Freddy's Dead kind of started making the rounds on like
Yeah,
sci-fi and stuff. Part
yeah,
two, I had never seen on TV. I think more recently you're starting to see it show up in like Halloween marathons and stuff.
yeah. Now that's actually where I first watched it, was on TV. Like it was on it was on USA because I had it taped. USA used to be really good, if you remember, with having
Yeah,
part twos. If they do a double feature, it was like I've got a VHS somewhere around here that has Puppet Master 2 and Child's Play 2. They never play the first one because rights and all that shit. It's a lot harder to get the originals of that
they
time
could get
period.
the sequels for cheap.
Yeah,
This was
yeah.
back before USA was like a big prime time cable network.
That was when they were just kind of starting to build up what they are now.
Yeah,
It's
you
just
would get
God, so weird to think about.
a lot of repeats of old TV shows
Yeah.
or like weird Canadian shows. I think one of them was called like Square Pegs that used to be on way back in the day. But like the
Well, yeah.
part I don't remember part 2 of Nightmare ever being on there, but I remember part 2s of other things like but then Sci-Fi was another one back in the day that would show like the most obscure random horror movies.
Sci-fi was killer when it came out.
Yeah.
It was
Now it's
absolutely amazing as a kid when it came out, and then
yeah.
it just fucking fell flat
That was
within a couple of years.
yeah, Sci-Fi was what introduced me to MST3K, so I will forever thank that version of Sci-Fi Channel.
Oh yeah, dude. Real quick, I gotta give it up to the old school sci-fi on that shit.
Mhm.
Back when it was spelled a certain when it was differently spelled, um, and they played a lot of those movies that when you're a kid and you're getting into all that shit, you kind of got happy about it. Me and my buddy John Horvath, when we found out Sci-Fi Channel was a thing, dude, we couldn't be more excited. And then literally 2 or 3 years later, it dropped the ball, and it was all these really shitty movies and stupid TV shows, and it was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, when they started getting the ball rolling, like early on for me, it was, oh, this is how I got introduced to Pumpkinhead. This is how I
Yes.
learned about Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth,
Mm-hmm.
before I had seen Hellraiser 1 or 2.
Yep.
And like I said, MST3K, and then just a lot of the Puppet Master stuff showed up there too. So I'm like, okay, this is like the weird niche channel. And then all of a sudden there was all these original shows, and then we're gonna change the spelling, and now it's like I don't want to watch you because most of your movies are fucking Asylum and they're garbage.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to
To
watch
put it lightly.
Sharknado. I don't want to watch Sharknado. I've watched the
That's
first couple, and that's enough for
mhm.
me.
Yeah, that's about the time that I just kind of like had it with sci-fi. They had already sucked before then, but that was kind of like okay. And then apparently now Sharknado has a huge following, and I'm like, why?
Yeah, I don't understand it. I'm like they weren't made to be good. They were made just basically to try and get some money.
Yeah,
Like And I just remember, not to go back, but growing up, I remember there were local stations here that I would stay up when I was way too young. And
Mm,
it's how I first saw parts of Day of the Dead. Like I remember distinctively seeing the Captain Rhodes separation in Day of the Dead at like 2:30 in the morning on like a Saturday. Because the
word.
local stations way back, late
Hmm.
80s, early 90s would play anything that late at night.
Oh yeah.
So Freddy's Nightmares was on, but then like Day of the Dead pretty much uncensored. Only a few years removed from its release in 85. So like 89, I'm seeing it on TV at like 2 in the morning. Full uncut gore. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm not sleeping.
Yeah.
And I'd have
Those are the
nightmares,
good
but then I'd
days.
but then I'd seek it out still. I'd have nightmares and be like, what can I watch tonight? What can I sneak up and watch tonight?
Oh yeah. Dude, TV God was like the greatest thing for that. Like I would, well, because for those that might be listening, not sure what a TV God is, it was this little book that came in the mail, or you got it at the grocery store, and it told you what was coming on for like the next week. And as the kid that I was, I was given I had an old school VCR,
Mhm.
and it was having some issues, so Dad bought me my own VCR, and you could record on it, and I recorded fucking everything. So I would
Yep.
go through the TV guide, and I would look at, okay, between 11 and 12 is usually when, TV, would go from the usual programming to horror movies or whatever. So I would just scan through there and like highlight, okay, I got this one, I got to set up for this. Like, oh, this one, da da da, And then there was what was really fun was sitting there and cutting the commercials out of all of them, pushing pause. Yeah.
Hmm.
God, I'm so we're old
Yeah.
men now.
Yeah, doing that with VHS and also doing that with audio cassettes. For those of you that don't know, audio cassettes was a format before streaming became popular, where music was recorded onto these tapes that were encased in plastic. It was actual
which
like tape.
which have actually made a huge comeback.
Yeah, I find it so funny that has made a comeback. Like I get records, I get vinyl making a
Mm,
comeback because it's kind of timeless.
yeah,
Audio cassettes, with the amount of problems I had with tape decks eating my tapes back in the day,
right. Yeah.
like these were the least convenient because I don't know how many tapes, recorded tapes, mind you, not ones that I purchased, luckily.
Mm,
Maybe one or two that I purchased, but mostly it was the recorded tapes that I had that got eaten up by so many car stereos or home dual
hmm.
cassette recorders.
Oh yeah, yeah. I see. For me, cassettes. Just real quick, cassettes. What I love about cassettes, because I still have quite a bit of a collection of
Mhm.
them. What I like about them is it's the one format of listening to music to where it's more difficult to skip. This way, you can put on an album and listen to it all the way through, and you kind of have to. And
Mhm.
I always liked that. I don't know, like as a kid, I remember buying for fucking $5 at a gas station going to my grandmother's. I had my little Walkman, and they had those, like, I remember they used to have CDs and tapes, right, at the right at the counter,
Yep. I know
and I
exactly what
got
you're talking about.
I remember like getting, buying, my dad got me a Diary of a Madman from Ozzy Osbourne. I listened to that thing over and over again. As soon as that one side was over, flip it over, and it was ready to go on the other one. And I did that over and over again. That's one thing I always loved about him.
Yeah,
So,
I had so many cassettes growing up, and it's funny. I don't know if you've heard of the documentary "Survival of the Film Freaks."
I don't know if I have or not actually.
Oh, it's if you get a chance to look it up and check it out, it's actually really fun. It's talking about like VHS collectors, things like that.
Oh,
I
sweet.
went on I went on and backed it because a few people I know were involved in the making of it. So I went on and backed it online and I got the soundtrack, but it's on cassette. The
Nice.
problem is I've never been able to listen to it because I don't own a cassette player. So
Oh,
it's
that
in
sucks.
storage, protected, still in the cellophane wrapper. I have not opened it to take it out. So I'm like, this will be opened when I get a new tape deck. Which
Right.
sounds weird to say in 2023, I'm going to get a new tape deck, but they're still out there.
Man, there are certain companies that are putting out the dual thing again, for recording and shit. The double sided uh, cassette. Uh,
Yeah, I had a lot of those growing up. I had the little portable ones.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, dude.
Almost every year for my birthday, I would get an upgraded version of one. And then I remember my buddy got an upgraded stereo. So he was like, "Here, you can have mine." And it was like a 5 disc CD changer with the tuner, the AM FM
Yep.
tuner, and the dual cassette. It was like this Sony that had the speakers that you could detach from the sides and put them anywhere in the room.
Yeah, I had
So
that too.
I had the speakers on either side of the room, and then I'd load in my favorite CDs, then I'd load in 2 of my favorite cassettes, and I'm like, I'm good to go. I can listen to the radio. When the radio goes to shit, I can turn on whatever else I want.
Yeah. I didn't realize that I didn't realize that the speakers came off until like my boom box was about dead. And I was
Oh
like, well,
man.
fuck me running. That could have been a whole lot better.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. You worked your way. You went from a small little radio with a cassette, and then you worked your way up to the boom box. And when you got the boom box, that was like the shit. And then like your
Yeah.
boom box turned into you know, the 5 CD changer or the 4, whatever the fuck. And then
Right.
it worked. Then it works its way into most cars when you get to that age.
Yeah. The first time I had a car with a CD player built in, I was like, oh my God, this is great.
Yeah.
And then I had friends who were like, no, you got to change the head unit of your car and get one with an aux cable so you can plug your iPod or whatever into it. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And now everything is, oh, I just get in and my phone's connected through Bluetooth and I can stream whatever.
Yeah. See,
Which is
that's
it's
it's a weird
convenient, but at
thing.
the same time, I kind of miss going through my book of CDs or like having a random tape in the glove box. And
Hmm. Oh, dude, I love it, man. Uh, I don't. I don't. I've only had one. No, I've had 2 vehicles that have had CD players, and neither one of them worked. So whenever like I borrow my mom's car or some shit, um, or if I'm borrowing a car or I'm in a car that I'm driving that has a CD player, dude,
Mhm.
I completely grab a stack of CDs, and I can only be gone because a lot of times my mom comes and watches my son while I go to band practice for a couple hours, and so I'll only be gone like literally going like 7 minutes down the road,
Mhm.
but I'll take like 3 CDs with me just in case,
Right.
because I don't ever get a chance to, because YouTube is what I've got on, or Spotify most of the fucking time, and I've got a shit ton of CDs that I love. It's just like it's like vinyl,
Yeah.
open them up and look at the inside, the art, look at the CD itself and all that. I'm one of those guys, man. So any chance I get to actually put my CDs or cassettes to good use, man, I'm down. I'm for it.
Yeah. See,
I'm all in.
I have a big binder of CDs. I went through and got rid of all the cases and the booklets for them. So I was like, I don't need all this anymore. It's just taking up room. So I have a big binder full of CDs. Stuff I've bought and stuff I burned over the
Hmm.
years. But what's
Oh,
funny
dude.
is I have not used a CD player in the car I have now. I have never put a CD in it. It has always been just connected to my phone and pull up whatever I want. That's basically everything in my CD collection is basically in my phone. I'm like, why have I never just grabbed a few CDs? And
Yeah.
I don't even know if the CD player works.
Mm.
I've had the same car since 2017. I don't know if the CD player works.
See, now the thing is, now I love my CDs and I love listening to it, but the having like Spotify or like just hooking up to the Bluetooth and all that. The beauty of that is like, okay, well, I have any song that I want to hear at this very moment, like to my
Mhm.
expose. Um, but with CDs, also same thing. I mean, like you can go through and skip too, but you get that one or two CDs you have with you that like is just solid through, from the front to the back, and you just let it play, and you don't worry about having to change shit. It's a beautiful fucking thing, man. It
Yeah,
really is.
exactly. It's easier to get through CDs and listen to everything on there or a cassette than it is to get through the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise in a full watch of the
Yeah,
franchise.
100%. Yeah.
To bring it back to what we've been talking about, because this is man, it's always fun talking with you, man. It's always fun.
Oh yeah, dude. I always love coming on. Yeah, dude. I love talking to you.
So final thoughts on Freddy's Dead. Would you say people should, if they're if they haven't seen it, or even if they have, should they give it a rewatch or a first time watch? Do you think it's definitely something somebody should sit down and watch, even as like a first time if they've never seen it, especially?
I mean, if you're new to the franchise and you're going through them, I mean, yeah, give it a watch. I mean, it's got its bad and it's good, but it's got more bad than it has good. I mean, it's goofy. It's the goofiest out of the movies. It's the wackiest. It's the biggest mess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, watch it. You know, you might. I know a lot of people who just love this movie to death, and and I was one of those people. Honestly, like I really like it was one of my favorites, and literally rewatching it the other night. I don't know when the next time I'll watch that movie.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I love it, but I don't love it. I think I love the memories that go along with seeing it as a kid and getting into all that shit. I think that's what I love about it more than anything is watching it and remembering, hanging out with my buddies when I was like fucking 13 watching this shit,
Right.
and instead of actually going, man, this is a great movie because it really isn't.
Yeah. I'm the same way. Like if you haven't watched it, give it a watch just so you understand what it is.
Might as
I
well.
Yeah, I mean, I had high hopes for it when I first saw it because I was like, "Oh, this is where they killed off Freddy." I remember, the commercials on TV where
Hmm.
you had Iron Butterflies and Agata Davida playing over a lot of those spots. I'm like, "This is gonna be cool." And then I watched it and was just like, "Oh,
False advertising.
okay, this is what they did." All right.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, and I thought five was the low point in the series. You look back and you're like, five's it's as many flaws as five has, it's not nearly as flawed as Freddy's Dead.
I'd rather watch five than Freddy's did. I
Four
will
and
go ahead and
five,
say that.
four and five, Dream Master, Dream Child are two that I can put on. Like my favorite is Dream Warriors, but if I'm just looking for like background movies while I'm working on something, four and five of Nightmare I
Same.
can throw on anytime. It's kind of the same
Yeah,
with
dude.
four and five of Halloween, even though part five of Halloween is like,
It's a mess.
I can
It
put
doesn't
those
make
on and be
sense.
like, okay, yeah,
Yeah. Same. Dude, there's a special place in my heart for four and five of both those. Well, no, because five kind of sucks, but yeah, I don't know. It's about the same. Like I remember like when it comes to Halloween, four and five, I watched those first before I seen any of the others.
same. They
Um,
were
eh,
always, saw them on TV before I saw the rest. Then I was like, wait a minute, there's a part three that doesn't have Michael Myers. And then at first I hated it. And now I'm like, no,
mhm.
no, no, it's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and with Nightmare on Elm Street, four and five, there I don't know for some reason I'm the same way. If I'm like, I'm feeling a little Freddy tonight. Like I'm doing some shit or whatever, like just throw some four and five on. That's usually because they're fun. You know,
They
they
go
connect.
fast too. Yeah, they
Yeah. Oh
connect,
yeah.
which is another thing that I kind of wish they would have done with Freddy's Dead is give us some more of the Alice story because it just goes away. After five, it's done.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
well, she had her kid. It's like, yeah, but she lost Dan, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened.
Yeah. Old girl that took over for Patricia Arquette, she annoys the living shit out of me. She is my least favorite thing about four and five.
I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah.
I don't mind it. I'm okay with that if they would have done something. I mean, Tommy Jarvis got three movies in Friday, so we could have got a third movie with Alice to close that out. She being the one that kills Freddy instead of this
Hmm.
daughter we never knew about. But we already talked about all that.
Right, right.
See, I think we're both like, see it for the sake of kind of learning about the movie,
Yeah.
and hey, if you end up really enjoying it, more power to you. Hey, everyone has their preferences, man. Everyone's got their opinions on things, and that's cool. Whatever.
And every town has an Elm Street.
Exactly. All right. So with that, Chuck, you got anything you want to plug, you want to promote while we're here? Mike
Sure.
is yours. Go right ahead, sir.
Uh, well, my band Bastard Sons of a Judas Goat. We are playing the Fist of Riffs 2-day music festival thing in Louisville, Kentucky, on May 12th. and May 13th. We're playing on the 12th alongside Artwork for the Blind, which is a great fucking band out of Indiana. To 20-Watt Tombstone. They're a two-piece, good Southern rock, heavy Southern rock guys. The Hell You Say, Kearn. There's a whole bunch of great local bands in the around Kentucky and Indiana kind of area. We're also recording we've been in the process of recording our new album, which we're hopefully I got to go in and do vocals. Both of us do, mainly me, here soon. So hopefully have that out in a couple of months.
All right.
My podcast, Video Store Clerks, Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube. We've been taking kind of a little bit of a hiatus for a couple of weeks because there's one of our guys has had some serious, he's got some heart issues that have kind of crept up and kind of ruined some shit. But we'll be back on track here soon. And then Nasty Nation and Graveyard Talk, that you can listen to those on Spotify and Anchor. And that's, of course, Graveyard Talk is my buddy Whitman, who I've mentioned a few times tonight, who also check him out, Whitman Photography. You can look him up. He's on all the little platforms, IG and Facebook and all that shit. And then I'm also, I've got some writing stuff going on. I've got a novella that I'm finishing up. And it's I'll just give you a hint. It's about a killer soda machine.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's kind of a fucked up story, probably one of the most fucked up stories I've ever written. And I'm also writing stories for the Any Last Words podcast, Any Last Words magazine, that I have my own little segments in called Nasty's Nightmares. So
nice.
Yeah, so check that shit out. That's all I've got going on at this moment.
Cool. And I will put information for all that Chuck mentioned in the show notes. But Chuck, if you want to send me over information for where your band's going to be playing, I'll include that in the show notes too, so people can check that out, figure out if they want to go down there and see you guys live and shit.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So again, Chuck, thank you for coming on. It's always a blast having you here.
Always a blast coming on, man. I definitely appreciate it. I always love talking horror with you.
We may not stay on topic for most of the show, but I don't give a fuck, man. It's a lot of fun.
Hey, that's how it goes.
Right back. We eventually bring it back to what we're talking about.
We always Kevin Bacon it up. I'm telling you, that's just how it goes sometimes.
I really get. Thanks, man. You're always welcome to come on.
Hey, anytime, bro. Anytime.
Yeah, definitely. And why don't you talk to Whitman at some point, see if maybe he wants to join us for a conversation about something. We'll see about setting something up.
I will actually. I'll be seeing him here in just a little bit, actually. So I'll definitely throw that out at him.
All right. Until next time, everyone, why don't you just keep enjoying the universe that's just a bit skewered.
Connect with us on social media. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/skewereduniversepodcast or join the group, facebook.com/groups/skewereduniversepodcast. Follow us on Twitter at skeweredu or Instagram at skewered_universe_podcast. Find the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify or Podbean.com. Support the show by going to patreon.com/skewereduniversepodcast to get special episodes and commentary tracks exclusive to members. What's with kids today, huh? No respect.
You can't scare me anymore.
Oh, you better speak up. Oh, must be my deaf ear. Kung Fu. This, bitch.